give me 1 minute. What I'm going to do, Tripty, I'm going to start up the Facebook Live. And then once that starts, Tripty, I'm going to have you talk a little bit about Saturday or the weekend, and then we'll move forward. Okay, we're on Facebook Live. Thanks everyone for coming. Tripty, you got the stage.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another great episode of Tech School. And I wanted to start off by actually giving you some info on a really cool event that I participated in this weekend. It's part of the On Deck Fellowship, and it was Global Build Week, which is their version of Demo Day. And the reason that today's meeting is so perfect is that our group decided to we just create a product which eliminates gender bias in the pitch process. So, women getting 2% of all VC funding, and their average check size being 30 to 45% lower than checks that are given to male-led firms, are mostly driven by two major components. One is lack of access to warm intros, and the second is subconscious bias in the pitch room. So creating a product for that to allow for greater access and the removal of warm intros. And so super excited to have today, serendipitously, a meeting on pitches. So with that, I'm gonna turn it over to Dr. Rolanda.
Thanks, Tripty.
Thank you, Tripty. Always such a warm welcome. Thank you. And hi, everybody. I am super excited to join in again. This is our 4th session together. And as I was preparing, I had to kind of calm my spirit because I was like, oh, there's so much I want to say. There's so much I want to share. And it's like, kind of feeling the scarcity around time. And I just had to take a deep breath and be like, no, we've got plenty of time. Even though this is our 4th session in this particular series, this is not the end. Like, we're still going to be able to continue these conversations. And so I'm just setting that scene, I think more so for myself before I jump into this, just kind of taking that relax, like we're going to cover everything and we will continue to have the conversation. So I don't want anybody to stress as we're covering this. It's been about, I think this is 3 weeks since the last time we met. And so while I have been able to avoid the PowerPoint for the majority of our sessions together, today I really did think it would be a useful tool for us to have PowerPoint. And I want to kind of, because we've had a little bit of a gap and we covered a lot of stuff, I do want to just really cleanly recap what we covered in the last 3 sessions. And then of course, I'm gonna throw a whole bunch of additional information at you today for session 4, which is kind of new. But like I said, this is not our final time getting a chance to chat. And this is kind of going to introduce some concepts, just like everything else was. It's an introduction, a way of thinking. And so I'm going to go ahead and jump right in. I'm going to do the share screen. Bear with me. I'm using an iPad. Like, me and technology, we're making it work. But the only thing about when I do the share screen is I can't see everyone else, your faces, things of that nature. And so if there is a question or you want me to stop, just feel free to unmute yourself and jump right in, because otherwise I'm not using my iPad. I'm not able to see the chat, or like if a hand goes up or anything like that, or anybody else's video. So with that being said,
and Rolanda, I'll monitor the chat, and I'll keep you abreast on everything.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Teamwork, it makes the dream work. And so let's see. It's got me here sharing my screen, and we're going to pull up. Okay, perfect. So now we've got, I guess I should ask,
yeah.
Can you see it? Okay.
It does.
Perfect.
It looks great. It looks great. I love the
Oh,
pastels,
awesome. Okay.
all that, that's me.
It's it. a festive screen, right? Get us
Yes.
started. So our fourth session, just to kind of, give us an idea of what we're going to try and cover. I always like to begin with setting an intention of what I want for our time together. My goal for this whole series has been to really just give empowerment tools. One of my deepest beliefs is that all of us already have a blueprint inside of us. We already have the knowledge and the insight that we need to accomplish our purpose, right? And so I want to empower us to see that our mind is one of our most powerful tools, and it's here to serve us. And so as we are evolving and we're on our journey, the more that we can tap into and become aware of how we can use our mind, I think that empowers us to be able to accomplish that purpose that's already laid inside of each one of us, right? And so I really do hope that the takeaway from all of this is that you can do this. You have all the tools already inside of you. These are free, very accessible methods and ways to enhance your performance and to actually make the journey a little bit more enjoyable. Like I already stated, we've had a couple weeks away from each other, so I want to kind of just briefly recap our sessions for 1 through 3. When we did the sessions, I laid everything out in the framework of story, right? So I shared my story, I shared my experiences, because honestly, I am an expert in myself, right? My experience is my story. But I also wanted, because I think story is such a powerful tool, I wanted to be a demonstration for everyone to see this is how you can also use your own story. And so when I'm recapping, though, I'm going to be recapping more from a conceptual space, putting on a little bit more of that researcher cap. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want you to see what are the concepts that I was pulling from. Even though we were talking from a space of story, what are the terms? What are the concepts? And I want you to see that, because all of this is like freely available information, right? I am not your only source or conduit to this info. So if there's something you want to learn more about, I want you to see what the term is, what the concept is, so that you can Google it. Well, honestly, there's so much information available about all this stuff. So you can Google and you could do deeper dives, and you can continue, as we talked about before, this is a practice. So I want you to continue that practice. So I'll do the recap, and then I think it's probably going to be really helpful to have a brief question and answer, very brief, just to see if there's any questions or any spaces that we need to kind of clear up before we go into today's session. Then of course we'll end again with a Q&A at the end of today. And so I am very hopeful. I'm starting my little stopwatch here, that we are going to be able to cover a lot of goodness, and whatever we don't get today, we'll get the next time, right? Okay, so in session 1, again, this was cloaked in the story, but I kind of shared about my experience. But the takeaways from that was we were talking about confidence, and we were talking about confidence not as something that, oh, people are just born with. Some people are just already very confident, and some people, oh, well, if you don't have it, then you're just out of luck. And really this space of understanding, no, it's a practice, which means that with time and commitment, you will be able to develop a strong sense of self, a opportunity to see and own your story, understand who you are, and show up fully in that. And again, it's just something that comes with practice. We already know everybody here is an expert in themselves, but we aren't always taught to take the time and take our energy into focusing and really studying ourselves and getting comfortable with ourselves and standing in ourselves. And so our first session was really trying to carve this understanding out about how important it is to dedicate time to this. We talked about limiting beliefs, imposter syndrome, some common narratives that are out there that honestly, we've been taught, many of us, a lot of these narratives, and we may not have been aware of how detrimental they may be, or how they may not be ultimately serving us. And so I won't go into those again. I think I covered, a couple of the general ones, but at the end of the day, it's really about doing our own work and finding out what beliefs and narratives each one of us individually are holding on to. We're all different. We all experience life differently. And so we've got different beliefs. Something though that I would like to just remind as a major takeaway is a belief is just a thought that you just repeated to yourself over and over and over and over again. And now you believe it to be true. Right. And so the good thing about that means that it's really easy to insert a new thought. And as you insert a new thought and repeat it to yourself over and over and over, now you're in the process of creating a new belief. And so this is about the awareness of what are the beliefs that you are holding on to right now and how are they impacting you. And I shared how some of the beliefs that I held, how they impacted my performance, and essentially think about it as the illustration of like, it's extra baggage. You're doing the journey, you're going through life, but you're doing it with extra baggage. So you're going to be less efficient, you're going to be less focused, less effective. And for me, at this part in my journey, the most important part is if it's taking away my joy, if it's interrupting my enjoyment of the process, enjoyment of the journey, because this is something that we don't hear about quite as much in our hustle hard culture, right? We're here to actually experience joy. We're here to enjoy the journey. And so the homework assignment that we had was get a journal, like super simple, but everybody get this journal and really write what came up for you in that initial talk, what resonated. And, with all of my talks, I always say, if it doesn't resonate for you, no worries, no problem, toss it to the side, right? You keep what works for you, you keep what aligns for you, and what doesn't, toss it, right? But I wanted us to practice the space of journaling, and I wanted us to practice this awareness and reflection of, okay, what are some of my own beliefs? What are some of the narratives? Where there might be areas where I'm experiencing imposter syndrome? So some things to think about. Hopefully, at this point, we've been able to do some of this homework. And if you did, some of the things I call it like a pulse check, but look at what are some of the beliefs that are running in the background of your mind that might not be serving you. What's that extra baggage? What's that extra distraction? Okay, so a nice cheat code for this, because sometimes I don't know what they are. Look for areas where, if you're feeling challenged by perfectionism, if you feel like fear is keeping you, so like fear of starting, fear of failure, those are, you call them triggers, you can call them kind of like illumination points where you can kind of see, what is leading to this? What belief is running in the background that is leading me to want to strive and show up as perfect and feel like I need to prove myself and feel like I need to please everybody, or I need to, some people call it playing small. I like the idea, the term, the phrase faux humility, like, oh, no, I'm not worthy of that, right? What are some of the beliefs that make us think that we have to do that, right? And so that's kind of what we covered in session 1. Jumping into session 2, that's when we really started getting into this concept of, listen, whether you're aware of it or not, there's programming that's running. And when you think of yourself as a system, right, all systems run by design. So there's something that has been programmed inside of you, usually by society, right? We're raised with, or I should say, we are given our socialization so that we can be successful in our society. And in that process, we receive certain programming, and we create certain habits, and we put certain things on autopilot. But on our journey, especially as we become adults and as we are becoming more empowered and we are liberating ourselves, we want to review that programming and find out, does it make sense for me still? And if it doesn't, let's revise it, right? Think of it as like software. Let's get an update to it, right? And so we talked about growth mindset and kind of shifting this belief that we should just come out of the womb and know everything and be able to do everything, giving ourselves more grace to actually know, hey, no, I'm here to learn, I'm here to grow. And that's a process. And when we started talking about a practice, we want to talk about what can we do that's a small but very impactful way to shift and reprogram ourselves, right? It's not about money being spent, it's about time and attention and intention. And so the practice that we discussed, this really is it's a tool, and it's incredibly powerful, even though it's so simple. It's like, sometimes something can be so simple and it's like, oh, whatever. And we toss it to the side, not recognizing that simplicity is where, I mean, literally some of our most powerful tools for change exist, right? And so we talked about this idea of celebrating our wins. Again, it's so basic, it's so simple, but if we're honest with ourselves, because that's not something that is, I would say, encouraged, right? As much as maybe it could be, it just might not be something we're doing by default. And that's what we wanted to change. We were talking about this idea of traditional wins. We know how to look at that. Okay, what did I accomplish? What, I can tell my friends about, I got this degree, I got this funding, I started, my own business. But what about the non-traditional wins, right? And starting to shift our perspective to be able to see, hey, there are times where we might not come out traditionally victorious, right? But the fact that we showed up, the fact that we tried, the fact that we recognize that we are in process and we are able to celebrate all the phases of the process, right? That is where we have space to look at some of our non-traditional wins. And each time we do that, we're in the process of building our confidence. And so I told you I was going to give you tools that are simple and they're free and they're super easy, right? And so to help in building this awareness and seeing our wins, we talked about writing them down, speaking them, sharing them to other people, because your brain is listening. You're reprogramming your brain. When you're telling it to other people, you hear it. When you're telling it to yourself, you hear it. When you're writing it down, there's that motor and mind connection that's happening. And it's just being installed. It's being implanted. We're getting the software going, right? The other tip and tool for that was acknowledging the wins in others, right? And sometimes that's kind of easier. It's easy to see somebody else's success, especially with the socialization that a lot of us have received of, I don't want to put too much light on me. I don't want to come off as haughty or too proud. So sometimes it's easier to point out the wins for other people, but remembering that if you see someone shrinking away from that compliment, encourage them to stand in it. The other thing that we know is that when you teach something, when you share something, it instills it even deeper for yourself. You get a deeper understanding in it, because to teach it, you have to understand it, and you have to figure out a way to then clearly articulate it to others. And we talked about how you can use your story to do that, to begin these conversations, to contribute to what we want to see as the new normal. And when I say we, I'm really talking about me, but I'm hoping that other people join me in that. We want to see this new normal. I talked about the importance of finding role models and mentors. We're very clear and we understand that we want to have role models and mentors for all these other areas of our life, but this is an area too. Also with accountability partners, identifying those people in your circle and really just creating a space for yourself where this becomes a new normal. Remove some of that challenge so that this way you just make it easier on yourself, so that this habit can now become part of your default. And so the homework, super simple, right? Identify and write down at least one win from every day. The pulse check is just basically, was that hard to do? Did you do it, right? Like real talk, when it comes to like homework, it's like sometimes we'll look at stuff that's super easy. The question is, yes, it's easy, but did you do it? Because here's back to, this is a practice, and the practice is time and commitment. And so the consistency of it is where you're going to actually start seeing gains and shifts in your perspective. All right, I'm going to skip on to what we covered in session 3, because we want to get to the good stuff, which is session 4, which is today. So session 3, we talked about story and narrative as an actual tool. Because if you remember in session 1 and session 2, we were shining the light on how story and narrative and beliefs can be used to hinder our performance, right? It could be extra baggage, right? And so now in session 3, we're looking at it as how story can be used to your benefit, right? When we're using it from a space of intention, when we are recognizing, we talked about there are many storylines, story arcs, look at your movies, look at your books, we're all familiar with that, looking at how we are the hero, and you can look at the hero's journey to help you frame your own story and to see that that's what's happening. All of these narratives are just stories, right? And so I'm big on empowering us to be able, again, super free, super easy to access, just understanding though that you are the hero in this story and you have the power to choose the narrative. You have the power to choose the storyline is a huge tool. It's so powerful. It's simple, but it's powerful, because a lot of times we'll walk through life thinking that the story defines us. And that's not the case. You define your story and then you go from there. And so I'm not going to recover that session, but clearly that's an area that I'm very passionate about. And so looking at, you know, what do you want your storyline to be? What do you want that narrative to be? What is that story arc? And thinking about the footage of your life, what is the footage that you're using for your movie? You get the choice to decide. It's all being quote unquote filmed, right? But you pick the footage. And then even when you think about like a particular moment, right? You choose the musical score that goes behind it. Do you have, you know, ominous, dreadful music behind that moment? And it's like, oh gosh, what's going to happen next? Or are you framing that moment? It's again, the same, the same footage. It's all about perspective. Are you framing that with the Rocky theme music of like, you know, I'm the comeback kid and I'm going to get it done. And so it's all about framing, and I want us to be empowered to know that we have the choice in that. We choose what the arc is, we choose what the plot is, we choose the characters that we want to highlight, and we choose that space of seeing ourselves as the hero as complex and somebody with depth and somebody with all kinds of experiences, because that's what makes a movie actually interesting. That's what makes it real, right? And so the homework assignment was looking at your journey and your story as the hero's journey and going back and identifying the milestones that are going to support your chosen narrative. And I really just want to highlight it again. It's you get to choose, right? You are empowered, you are liberated, and you get to decide what this looks like, right? And so some things to kind of consider about that is it challenging to stand in that place where you see yourself as the hero, where you see that this movie, this experience revolves around you? And the reason why I bring that up is because in our society, we are very much so taught to be very externally focused, right? We're taught to pay attention and study everybody else, study all the systems that we're a part of. Really what it comes down to is we're taught not to mind our business, right? One of the most freeing things that I've learned is to mind my business, meaning focusing on myself, doing the work here. This is the only thing that I get to control is my experience, my perspective, my mind, right? And if I'm focused on studying everybody else, which is what we're socialized and trained to do. And I'm trying to control and manipulate and take, what they're doing, because somehow that is supposed to impact me, I'm missing the point. I'm missing the most powerful point of the story, which is it's my story. Okay. So I think I've harped on that enough. And then, okay, I'll leave that last part. The whole idea that I mentioned this, it's this idea that you know the truth by the way it feels. And so you can use your emotions. This is a whole other conversation, a whole other talk, but your emotions are information, right? Your emotions are a language all into their own. And so spending the time to make sure that you understand the language of your emotions and what they're trying to convey and tell you they are for you. We're taught a lot of times to ignore our emotions, when in the end of the day, it's such brilliant, fabulous information that's available through that. And so you can use those emotions to feel how the story that you are creating for yourself, how does that feel? Does it ring true? And if it doesn't, that is a space where you can have awareness. Okay, so I'm going to stop the screen share. I'm going to try to anyway, because I want to give us a moment for any questions over what we just covered. Did that just work? Okay, I think we're back on deck. Okay, so I'm looking at the clock. We're actually doing fantastically on time.
Yeah, you're doing great, Rolanda.
Yes, I was just gonna see if there's any questions, because again, we covered a lot. There was 3 sessions with a lot of depth, a lot of meat. And so is there anything before we jump into today's session that anybody wants me to address or clarify?
I'll open up to the cohort if any question. I didn't see, I was monitoring the chat offhand, Rolanda. I didn't see questions, while you were talking. I think everyone was just absorbing everything, right? Over the those last 3 sessions, that was a lot of data. What I'll do is I'll continue to monitor the chat part, write down some things. And if you want to just join, maybe anyone, I think Joanna's unmuting herself. Pantages, do you have a question?
Well, I don't have it formed yet. It's not formed yet, so I'm not sure. Not right now.
Okay, all right. So I think what we could do, Rolanda, is we can move on to this session. I'll monitor the chat. I'll write everything down, and I'll let you know. We had some new people came on. Mike Lawless is on. Good seeing you, Mike. So I think we can move to that final session if you want, Rolanda. I'll monitor the chat for you.
Perfect. And so, like I said, my intention and desire for all of this is to empower us with tools and to just let us you don't have to absorb everything right now. You don't have to absorb it overnight, because you won't, right? That's the point of the journey. The point of the whole life is that we're growing and we're expanding. And so these are just a few of the tools that I personally can say allowed me to experience some real shifts. And when I talk about my personal journey, like what's most important for me, and I guess everybody gets to choose what resonates for them, is I want to enjoy it. I want to do great things, but I want to have fun while I'm doing it. And so these are some of the shifts that have helped me to kind of get there and do that. And so hopefully that is resonating and it's giving good food for thought. And so I'm actually going to go ahead and jump back to the screen, do the screen share for our last slide, which is basically just going to cover. As you can see, I'm not great at doing 2 things at once. So
you're doing great. You're doing great, Rolanda.
It's like, give me 1 second. We'll get this PowerPoint up again. Okay.
We got it. We can see it.
Okay, perfect. Okay. So for this last session, I'll be honest with you, there's so much that I wanted to cover. And I just recognize that for me, I'd rather give you the overview and hopefully it piques your interest, and then you can go on your own journey and, press further into the areas that resonate and feel right for you, right? So this idea of knowing yourself and knowing your story is so foundational. It's not even funny. It's so foundational, but it's so interesting how, as a society, we just haven't spent as much time. Like, think about it, like elementary school and middle school. I feel like we need to have classes at that level to start this process of helping people to really focus on themselves, understand themselves, and then begin the journey of how do I communicate that clearly to others, right? Because what we're trying to do in some cases is I want to communicate myself clearly to others, but I don't actually know myself. I'm not in touch with myself. I'm not present to myself, right? You see, there's a gap and a disconnect. And then when things are hard and we're struggling with it, it's easy to then assume, well, this is just something I can't do. I don't have access to this, so I'm not going to try and I'm going to leave it alone. And that doesn't work when we are in these positions of leadership. And I want to kind of take a second to share a little bit from my experience, spending the past 10 years in the military as a naval officer, as a leader. I mean, I've had some amazing opportunities to lead other individuals. And I mean, in precarious situations, in precarious environments where there really was life and death. I've been deployed. I've been in scenarios where, the consequences are very high. And I want to invite us all to consider that as founders, we are all leaders, right? We are all leaders. The decisions that you're going to be making are going to have a direct impact on the people that are working for you, on your customers, on your clients. And so I thought it would be really helpful to discuss and share something that I would say is my biggest takeaway from all of the leadership training, all of the leadership classes, and my own lived experience when it comes to leading others, especially in trying times, turbulent moments, in moments of transition, in moments of challenge, right? The biggest takeaway is this idea of know thyself. Know thyself. It's so basic, but at the same time, it's so deep. You can spend an entire lifetime digging to understand who you are. The reason why, and in all of my leadership training, that's really where the heart of it goes. And there's so many books and philosophers and people that can go deeper about this. But in a quick nutshell, the reason is you have to be clear on your strengths and also your opportunities for growth, the areas where you're not quite as strong, right? Because that allows you to best prepare. That allows you to build a team. That allows you to figure out, what do I need to delegate? Where do I need to bring in support? If you are oblivious to who you are, if you are oblivious to your strengths, so that means that you're not playing your part, you're not stepping up in the moment where you need to be the one to step up, you're not bringing to the table the fullness of your gifts, that's going to be a loss for the entire group, for the entire team. If you're not clear in the areas where I like this phrase, that's not my gifting and that's not my ministry. If you're not clear about where those areas are, guess what? You're not going to be able to bring in the support that you need. You're not going to be able to prepare and look at the risks and look at the opportunities as effectively as you could if you understood and knew yourself. The other piece is, if you haven't done this work for yourself, now you as the leader, you are a demonstration. The people that are following you are not so much going to be taking in the words that you say. I mean, to a certain extent, yes, but let's be honest, half the words that are being said are lost. It's like there's only but so much that the mind is going to be taking in. What is really being absorbed and what is being taken in is the demonstration of who you are. Think about parents with their children, right? We know it conceptually that the kids are watching their parents, right? The kids are focusing on what the parents do, right? And so it's going to be super important for you as you're creating teams and as you're leading teams. You want the people that work for you to also be clear about who they are. You want them to be clear about what are their strengths and what are their challenges. What do they bring to the table? How can they contribute? You want them to be confident in that so that they can fully contribute, especially in moments of challenge, turmoil, and change. That is not the time when you want people to be confused and unsure and have almost this inability to act, right? And so I say that because I think we know this, right? Intuitively, we know this, but the question really comes to how much time are you dedicating to actually cultivating this? Because that's really where the telling space is. If we hear something, we're like, I already know that, I already do that, I'm already set on that. Okay, that's great. But where it shows up, right, is, and why it's important for us, let's bring it into this context of being founders. While I was working at the incubator in the West Coast of Florida, one of the things that was like the recurring truth that I noticed, I mean, we had brilliant entrepreneurs, brilliant founders that were participating, that would come in, and even people that weren't necessarily in the program, we would talk to them, we'd go through their pitch decks. We just really got a chance to connect with so many different founders. And something that, I mean, was like a recurring pattern was individuals were spending so much time focusing on the business, focusing on developing the business idea, developing, all of this infrastructure and spending their attention on the business. They were not spending as much time developing themselves, if that makes sense. And so when they would come and they would do their pitch, that's when it would be evident. That's when it was clear that, okay, this individual hasn't spent quite as much time investing the time here to clearly articulate who they are, what they have accomplished, what they've done, what they stand for, what they believe, what they value. Because as an investor, and I think everybody has heard this, but I want to underline it, right? An investor is going to be making that investment, yes, in a great idea, but at the end of the day, they're making the investment in the founder. And that I'm saying that because I've heard literally with my own ears, investors say, that person has a great idea, but I don't have confidence that they can actually pull it off. On the flip side, I've heard it said where, okay, that idea, I don't call it trash, but it's not great. That idea is not strong, but that founder can get it done. Not that idea. They're not going to invest in a bad idea, but they'll wait for another opportunity. They'll keep that person on the radar. And if they come across a great idea, they'll see if they can marry that up, right? And so I just don't know if people are recognizing how important it is to know themselves and be able to communicate that and convey that and stand in their story. Story is such a powerful way to communicate. And so the homework for last session was about creating your story, about looking at the milestones in your founder's journey, thinking about that storyline, thinking about that arc, being intentional about it, right? And the reason why I wanted you to be able to do that is because those milestones, those being able to quickly reach to those stories, that's how you're going to communicate. That is literally how you're going to communicate to your investors. Being able to highlight your skills, those transferable skills, those moments where you did overcome in a challenging moment. You don't want to wait until you're in the middle of a pitch to now be thinking up, well, yeah, when did I have to overcome something? Or when did I, when did I have to come up with something on the fly. You want to be able to already have that clear, concise, in your back pocket, something that you have spent time and gotten comfortable with. And so one of the tools that I want to have you think about is this idea of creating a pitch deck about yourself. And the reason why we create a pitch deck in the first place, right? It's a communication tool. It allows, because you know your business, you're hanging around your business all the time, right? But you want to communicate your business concisely and clearly to another person. And the pitch deck forces you to do that in a limited amount of space, in a limited way, and in a format that's easily accessible to others, right? And so one of the things that I wanted to kind of introduce, and again, this is not about the formatting of a pitch deck and the formatting of, okay, this is how it needs to look. It's the concept of I'm going to dedicate as much time to knowing me and communicating about me as I do about communicating and knowing about my business. And I'm just going to give you a quick story of something that I observed, and really a big part of the impetus of wanting to kind of share, like, this is kind of helpful. You might want to consider doing this. We were at a pitch, and there was a woman, and she had a fantastic, like really strong idea of what she wanted her business to be. And she's pitching to a whole group of people. I won't say who or what or where, right? And in that pitch, it was the most fascinating thing. This individual, for the most part, didn't say anything. She delegated the bulk of the pitch to, let's just call it, a spokesperson. And I think it was more so just, a lack of confidence, which is, again, practice in being able to communicate and share. This person had, when you actually got a chance to talk with her, a really rich history, rich experience, lots of knowledge in this particular area. And because that person did not have the confidence or was not willing to communicate about themselves and the company directly, it was resounding across the board. Individuals that were listening just wrote her off. Like, And I just thought to myself, wow, this person could 100% be very, very effective at giving this presentation. They just have to practice it. They just have to focus and spend some time. And I'm sure if she looked at her own history, her own experience, she would have seen moments where she'd already had to accomplish and do things that were far harder, far more challenging than give this pitch to this room. And so looking at my time, looking at the selfie pitch deck, I want us to just think about this concept of taking the time to look at ourselves and figure out, how do we communicate about ourselves with the same clarity and conciseness, using story, because story is a very fantastic way to communicate, in the same way that we do about our regular pitch deck. And so in the interest of time, I also want to just talk about some self-discovery tools that have worked for me, because I do recognize that this idea of looking at ourselves and communicating about ourselves, it's a practice, and it's not something that we always get this opportunity to engage in. And so one thing that I don't even know if we talk about this enough, but this idea that we're all just mirrors for one another. So the people that are around you, the people that you come in contact with, people that trigger you, people that get under your skin, when you have moments of friction and you have moments of frustration, a great opportunity right there for self-reflection is just to ask yourself, okay, what is this moment trying to teach me? What is this person reflecting back to me? What can I see about myself in my interaction with this person? Something in the field of industrial and organizational psychology that we deal with and talk about a lot is this idea of feedback, and this idea of 365 feedback or evaluation. That's where you reach out to the people. Say if you're working in an organization, you have your boss, you have your peers, you have the people that report to you, getting feedback from these individuals, because they are getting to see you from different perspectives, different angles, finding out and gathering more information about who you are. Now, that's a whole other conversation about soliciting feedback, being willing to receive feedback, but connect that back to this experience of growth. We're trying to grow. We're trying to evolve. And to do that, we have to have a clear picture of where we currently are. Another way to kind of expand on this self-discovery is creating and keeping a me file. That's something that, as I was transitioning out of the military, that is definitely recommended for all of us. It's also, you know, another term is like a brag sheet, but keeping a file of your wins, whether they're traditional or non-traditional. When you have a clear idea of the storyline and the story arc that you are creating for yourself, you can be very intentional about the information that you keep in your me file, what represents a win and what supports your story. I am a huge fan of writing. Journaling is a big part of my practice of well-being, but also my practice of clarity and growth and evolution. And so I journal every day. I recommend it for a lot of people. Thinking about meditation, guided visualization, and yoga, those are also practices that I'm very connected to, and I feel they have allowed me to expand and grow in amazing ways, but also connect to a sense of self, connect to it's like slowing the mind enough to be able to connect to myself and hear myself. And then this is a fun one. I'm a huge fan of different like personality tests. And I'm just putting a couple up here just for people to think about. But again, if you're in a moment where you're like, I don't know where to start when I'm thinking about what are my strengths and what do I bring to the table, and how am I different than the person that's right next to me? You can go and, you know, get your Myers-Briggs, assessment for free and go peek and see, just out of curiosity, what comes up, what rings true, is there something in that you can then add to your storyline and add milestones to support. So, you know, mine was, I'm an ENTJ, I'm a commander type, right? And so I can look at my journey, my story, and I can find pieces that connect to that. There's the Strength Finders, Clifton Strength Finders, really interesting. I also am a huge fan of astrology. I think it's fun. It's just really, really interesting, but that's no pressure. This is like, you find what works for you and you dabble in it. And human design is another. All of these are just frameworks or ways of classifying and seeing us as individuals and as people. And so that is another way to kind of jump into self-discovery. Okay, so I'm back. End of the screen share. We got 7 minutes. That was a whole lot of information.
I think it was really good. I think it was good that you did the recap, you know, just going over the last few weeks, Rolanda. I think that was actually crucial. The one thing I was just thinking about, I think we could do this kind of workshop piece of maybe what we were thinking about, like, you know, thinking about what's that selfie pitch deck look like. It could be just a workshop piece of it. That could be an aspect of it. We can talk more about that, but that might be something like this, kind of like working kind of session with the group. So we'll think about what that looks like. I know we got a lot of messages. People are Mike Wallace says thanks. He seems really powerful. Thanks, Michael. Michael, thank you for your service. Michael's a professor at USD, ecosystem builder professor, and he's amazing. Thanks, Mike, for coming on. Any feedback, Michael? I'll let you know.
Thank you, Curly, very much, and for the opportunity. This is really a interesting session. I have to say that I come at this as an entrepreneurship professor, as an investor, and as a founder myself. But I'm very econ oriented and very business oriented, and I love the message that you bring across. So I put in the message folder, thanks. This seems really powerful in very early stages, especially. Team members and investors are betting on the person, and your message seems very much personal development. Is that a connection that you make between what you're teaching us and recruiting team members and getting the interest of investors?
Thank you so much for that feedback. And absolutely, absolutely, because I think that you have to have the, so I'm a researcher, and so I feel like to make decisions and to make decisions well, you've got to be informed, right? And so if you don't have the clarity or the information about what you're trying to attract and what you're trying to bring in and what holes you're trying to fill, you're just going to be throwing things at the table. And what happens is, right, we get people that say it's a 4-step process, right? This is the formula, and everybody fits into the formula, right? And then people do the formula and they're like, why didn't that work? Well, because you didn't assess and find the alignment for what you actually needed. And so that's the part that I think sometimes gets overlooked and lost. And so I agree, yes, when it comes to finding who you want to bring into your team, finding who you want to even have as your advisors, as your mentors, like your whole board you need to be thinking about this. You got to know who you are so you can figure out, well, what puzzle pieces go with that? Where am I trying to go? It's all going to be contingent on if you can provide wholeness with who you are first. And so, yes, personal development, I personally love that. And so if that didn't come across, I spent a great amount of time in the journey, but also because I want us to understand that we're all here for growth. We're not coming out of the womb knowing everything. The whole point is that we're on a journey and evolving. And so if we get to the point where we can start appreciating that and normalizing that, right, we give ourselves more permission to take risks and to try and to expand. And so, yeah, but yes, I thank you for that comment, but yes.
No, thank you for your message. And like I said, for me individually, in the way that I approach entrepreneurship, it complements very, very well. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
And Mike, how I met Rolanda is we were doing the kind of East Coast cohort with BBI with Matt Harper. Oh, so there's a little connection there. Rolanda, Matt and Mike are buddies. So yeah,
going back a long way.
Yeah.
So you're prior Navy too, I guess, Rolanda?
Yes. So I just recently transitioned out of the military. I've been out for 4 months now. And so I served for 10 years. And now I am, taking those same skills that I used in the military, but now I, have a strong passion area for getting this type of messaging out. And yeah, now jumping in, taking the leap and getting to experience the life of a founder myself. Yep.
I'll share that I advise a lot of transitioning military, both undergraduate and master's MBA students, and you're going Mach 2 if you're if you're 4 months out of transition. Oh my gosh, good job.
I like the Mach 2 analogy. Tripty had to leave, but Rolanda, Tripty really enjoyed this one off too. She's interviewing for an EIR position. Joanna Robinson, I know this on this session. Do you have any other any feedback for Rolanda or any questions before we close up? Sometimes I let Joanna have that part. She's been taking a lot of notes offhand. Or anyone else from the cohort? I think this was really good. I took so many notes, Rolanda.
Sorry, I couldn't find my unmute.
Yeah, no problem.
No, but it's great. And I always have a ton of thoughts, but they're not focused on as questions. Just I think it's really useful to think about, being self-aware and, in the context of being a leader and being scrutinized and just really knowing who you are and what you bring to the table and being comfortable with that. It's a really great message.
And Rolanda, I was just thinking about like all the work you've done in the last this kind of 4 sessions. Definitely appreciate you. We've been getting feedback from other people too who just listened to the recorded ones, and it's been amazing. So Rolanda, you definitely have the gift. I guess we're all validating your gift. I know you definitely have that PhD, but definitely understanding what founders need and just way they can communicate. So definitely appreciate you over these last weeks. We can talk more. I'll tell the cohort too. I'll talk offline with Rolanda, thinking about maybe what this workshop could look like, and just we'll probably get some more feedback from everybody. Joanna Pantages, any feedback before we close up?
I just think it would be fun if maybe she made a little, just like a little, even like one sheet, two sheet, or like mini book or a PDF or something where we could actually do this. Because I know what you're talking about with the simplicity, but like then you don't do it. At least I don't do it. But yeah, like a mini journal or something. I would love to start using that and actually.
I love that idea.
That is
Joanna.
such a fantastic idea.
Great idea.
Come through with the wisdom. I love that. Okay. I will take that for action for sure. That's that would actually be fun. I love journaling, and so yeah, making like a tool that we can
Little
kind of walk
tool.
through.
Yeah, just like a downloadable PDF or something. Not just for me, for all entrepreneurs. They definitely all need this. I think it's a nice little structure to like keep you on the right path.
Such a great idea. Thank you for that. I receive it and I take it for action that I'm going to make it. Yeah. And then I'll make sure that you guys get it first.
That's
Right.
great. And John Pantages is great with press releases. As soon as you get it, you can do a little press release on it. You know, this this new founder journal. That sounds great.
I just have
I
a
love that.
quick comment,
Sure.
Dr. Rolanda. I
Rolanda.
just want to say I really enjoyed you speaking these past tech schools. I've really been able to I guess I haven't started journaling just yet because of my schedule, but just being able to actually take in what you say, especially today when you're talking about minding your own business, just focusing on yourself, right? So that's something that I want to make sure that I continue to do. And it minding my own business, it ain't even always about just minding somebody else's business in a negative way. I tend to try to help everyone when sometimes I just have to focus on myself. So I just want to say thank you so much for coming on here and just talking to us.
Oh my God. Thank you guys so much. I'm receiving all this love. I am feeling it. And thank you. Thank you for the affirmation. It feels so great. Thank you.
That's great. That's great feedback. And you guys, you had some more feedback during the chats too with Tripty and Sunny and everyone too. Well, I think what we'll do, we'll close up this tech school session. I want to just thank you for all you've done for the group, Rolanda, and even for the cohort. All really good questions. That's been great. Mike, thanks for coming on. Great feedback. And then I'll let everyone go. Have a great week. I know this is kind of Olympic week, so I've been thinking a lot about how Olympics relates to it. I might bring some of that up next week. And but Rolanda, thank you so much. Take care, everyone.
Bye.